What's up? Welcome to episode 134 of Throwback Hoops. My name is Rob Clayton, and I'm joined as always by my amazing co-host and best mate, Woody V. What's happening, brother?
Hey, Robbie, man. It's good to be here.
Good to have you, mate. Look, firstly, before we introduce our extra special guest, I know it's been a tough week for you. You're going through a lot with the family. Do you want to maybe say a few words about what's happening?
No, I mean, I've said it before. I mean, we collabed with Unwrapped and the Pick and Roll guys, and when Matt was on the show a few years back, I talked about my dad's cancer diagnosis. He's in his final days, so he'll be lucky to make it the next couple of days. So, I mean, it's fitting that what I said about him introducing me to Sydney Kings and introducing me to basketball and helping me assimilate into society here. I said it to Matt. I said it on the Pick and Roll before. It's fitting that we're doing this Sydney Kings preview. Probably the last episode where my father will still be alive. So,
of course, mate.
It means a lot, man, to be here.
We'll try and take your mind off things as well tonight. And obviously, just want to give an extra shout out to Raj, who we love deeply there. So, appreciate that, Woods, and you're still making it on the show tonight. So, all right, let's try and, sort of change the tone a little bit there. So, Look, really thrilled to have this special guest on. It's almost more than a special guest now. I think Woods, it's someone that's it's a mate, someone that just it's
someone we care about a lot.
Exactly right. So it's his fourth appearance on Throwback Hoops. One of our absolute favourites. It's a huge Throwback Hoops welcome to the great Matt McQuade.
Not so much of the great, guys. Okay. Look, I just want to start by saying, obviously, Woody and I have had many conversations about his dad, and it's such a fabulous story. That your dad was really responsible for you falling in love with the game, and also, obviously you finding a community of like-minded people and falling in love that way. Basketball's got so many great stories about how people start, about how they fall in love with the game, about how it becomes a real passion. Mate, what can I say? But my thoughts and prayers are with you, and keep your chin up. I mean, your dad's a great guy. He's hopefully going to be in a better place soon. But which of course, doesn't, help salve a wound or whatever that, you go through a hard time, but you've obviously got a lot of friends, a lot of people who love you, all of us here included. And I've always said to you, whenever you want to chat or just talk about anything, I'm here for you. So
and
God bless you, man, and God bless your family.
And that means so much. And let me just say to all those people, all our listeners who don't know, like, Matt has been a huge support. I mean, he's had his issues with his mother and dealing with health issues with his mother. So for him and me to connect over the last few years has been amazing, and to be a big bro and someone who supported me during this tough period, I have to say thank you, Matt. So
of course, man. Anytime.
Well said, lads. All right, well, let's get into it. So, look, as always, we're going to start off the show with talking about what we're wearing today. I can see you guys are rocking some old school stuff there. So we'll start with our special guest. Matt, what do you got for us today, mate?
Well, it's funny. I remember the last time I was on here, I said to you guys, I'm kind of running out of singlets, right? Because I'm not a huge singlet collector. But I kind of pulled this one out. This thing that I'm wearing is 22 years old. And it's a Kings jersey, but it's actually Packard Bell. And it's, I don't know if you can see this, it's signed by every member of that team. So it was the 2001-2002 team. So it's actually the last Kings team coached by Brett Brown, who actually gave me this and signed by the team. So that was Matty Nielsen, Ben Melmoth, James Smith. Who else? Michael Kingma. Oh God, I'm trying to think who else. Oh wow! I mean, it's
BJ Carter wasn't there yet. No.
Travis Lane.
Yep.
Of course. How can I forget my name? Frank Drimmick, of course. Derek Moore, a good friend of mine, and Stephen Whitehead and Terry Johnson. And actually, BJ was on that team. So BJ, very early days for him. So and Isaac Burton played 8 games in that team as well. Believe it or not, his second go around as a Sydney Kings import. So, it's been sort of gathering dust at the bottom of one of my drawers, and I pulled it out and oh my God, okay, I've got to wear that. So
Deserves
because
a
I've
bit
worn
more
sort
to
of the old, the 92, Mark Dalton's old jersey and then a couple of other ones.
Yeah, I
But
mean, you had
wore a random
you had a
Celtics one.
Yabusele
Yeah,
European
was that
jersey,
who-
oh
man.
yeah,
That was
which
dope.
by the
right?
way, I know.
Dancing
Yeah, I
Bird.
should have worn that one because Amanda Gorgian keeps telling me to wear it. She wants a photo of it. I nearly was going to wear it, but I showed you guys that one, so I thought, I'll just wear this one.
Nah, we
And
like
shout
it,
out to
mate.
Gerson Yabusele. He just signed with
Philadelphia,
who?
huh?
Philly.
With-
Yeah, man.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, great to see him back in the association. So
Yeah.
nice one, Matt. We appreciate that one. A bit of a trip down memory lane. I think Woody's continuing that theme there. Woods, I think you might even have something even a bit older there.
Yeah,
you reckon
man,
today?
for sure. Matt's
you
gonna
got?
love this. Matt's gonna love this. But first, I want to give a shout out to. I mean, we've been talking about the Memphis Grizzlies lately, right? And we talked about what's her name? Who's the documentarian?
Jamie, I don't know. You asked me. You're supposed to run it down.
Kathleen
Put him on the
Jamie.
spot.
Yeah,
Kathleen
Kat
Jamie.
Jamie,
That's her
yeah.
name. So she's done two great documentaries. One is called The Grizzly Truth, and one is called Finding Big Country. So I found Big Country. Hold on.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah, great docos,
Found it.
those ones, man. If you get a chance to see it, there's a bit of big country.
Bryant Reeves.
Yeah.
My goodness.
I like
Anyway, two terrific documentaries about the Memphis Grizzlies and the history and the still folklore that lives in Vancouver and the support that they have. Anyway, I found this Memphis Grizzlies hat after like many years, so I thought I'd wear it. Anyway, check this out, Matt.
that. He's been waiting to show this one off. So the old Kings, like baseball style jersey. Tony D.
Ambrosis.
I remember they were all the
Ambu-
rage, those ones, Woods, like the baseball style basketball
Yeah, this is
jersey.
from
Yeah.
1991. All right, I know Matt McQuade likes to wax lyrical about how he's been with the Sydney Kings since '88 or whatever. But I mean, Bollywood's been there since 1990. So I've been a big fan. I've been a big fan of the Sydney Kings for a long time. And Tony D'Ambrosi was someone that, I mean, let me tell you a little bit about Tony D'Ambrosi, right? He played for Manly. He was part of that basketball program. He led New South Wales to a second place finish at the 1989 Australian Junior Championships. He made his NBL debut with the Sydney Kings at 19 years of age. And he played 9 seasons across 3 NBL teams with Sydney, Gold Coast. I actually do remember him with Andre Lafleur, one of my favorite guards ever on that Gold Coast Rollers team with Mike Mitchell,
Yeah.
etc. I know, Matt, you would remember that. But when we talk about Sydney Kings legends, I mean, he gets slept on a little bit. I mean, sure, he wasn't a star player, but he was someone that was endearing to the public, right?
So a couple of things with him. His nickname was Bambi. I don't know if you know that. And the reason that came about was because he said in a newspaper article he wanted to be like Ian Moose Rebellion. So he wanted to be like Moose, so Bambi. The other thing, and I look, again, it's one of my all-time favourite games, and I do tend to go on it about it a lot, which was Game 2 of the 92 semi-final series against Melbourne Tigers. In that game, Dwayne McLean was majestic. 45 points, Sydney Kings all-time single-game playoff scoring record, 15 to 21 from the field. He was incredible. I mean, I must have watched that game on video about 100 times. It's one of my all-time favourite games, full stop. And, of course, you see me behaving like an absolute idiot, jumping up and down on the coverage with the white Celtics jacket that I was famed for at the time. But in that game, Tony D'Ambrosis played the game of his life. He was 7 for 7 from the field in that game. And every time he did something, he blocked an Andrew Gay shot. He had a couple of steals. He was done. He did everything. And the crowd just absolutely went ballistic. And that was the high point of his career with the Sydney Kings, that one game in 1992 against the Melbourne Tigers, Game 2. And everybody remembers Dwayne and what he did. And the team, that's the game they shot 73.8% from the field, which is the second best field goal percentage in a game in NBL history, best in playoff history. They did that for the game against the Tigers. They won 124-118. This is how much I know about this game. But that was Tony's game, and it was the high point of his career. Amazingly enough,
17.6 rebounds in that game to be exact, right? And he had a 37-point game by the looks of things. 36.
he was really talented, but the next year was the year that obviously things fell apart for the Kings in '93, and one of the things that happened was that Bob Turner wanted to make him a starter, and it just didn't work, and it unfortunately put a lot of the veterans' noses out of joint early on before he was moved back to the bench, and it kind of, that was kind of the spiral, and didn't last very much longer after that. So I think he was gone actually in '94. But he was a terrific player, and you're right, he was underrated, definitely.
Yeah, '93 was the last year at Sydney. Moved to Gold Coast in '94. That's where he teamed up with Andre Lafleur, Mike Mitchell, and co. And
Might have
had
been
a really
Trevor
good
Torrance
season
on
that
team,
year.
right, Woods?
Trevor
Gold
Torrance
Coast
on that team.
Yeah.
To be fair, in 1996 at the Gold Coast Rollers, he played 35 minutes per game. He had that season high, Matt, I talked to you about, of 36 points, and he averaged 18.8 points per game. So it's something
decent, isn't
you
it?
don't talk about, right? Yeah, but
I seem to remember him being on an ad back in the day for something as well. I don't know what it was, whether it was like a sports
Matt will
store
tell
or
you.
something like that. Code. What it was.
I vaguely remember. Yeah. It's all right. The brain's old. It's turning to mush. So
Gotta forget something.
I got a great memory, but sometimes it fails me.
33 years old, this jersey. And my dad actually bought it for me when I was at the entertainment center. He's like, I really want that, Dad, and I want Tony D'Ambrosi. And he got it for me. So.
Well, appreciate it, fellas. Loving the old school Sydney King stuff. Unfortunately, I'm not going to continue the King stuff, but I have worn a Celtics jersey in honour of Matt, of course, today. So
I appreciate that. I saw the green, the
it's
Kelly
a bit
green.
of a strange one for me. So it's my favourite all-time player. It still feels pretty weird that this colour, team, and number combination. So I'll stand up and show you this one and talk a little bit about this guy.
So for all our audio listeners that can't see Robbie, he's wearing the number 12 Celtics. He's got a Dominique Wilkins Celtics jersey. That is...
Hey, I'm a Celtics fan, and even I think that's wrong.
That's random, man.
That's
How
not right,
random
is
is
it?
that?
I'll tell you what,
bro?
I'm going to have to get this jersey off with a crowbar as well. It's so tight. But well, look, I mean, so of course it's the Boston Celtics Dominique Wilkins champion jersey. So I've spoken a lot about Nique on previous episodes. So today I thought I'd just quickly focus more on his one season with the Celtics. So Nique actually ended up in Boston as a free agent the season after the Hawks broke my heart and traded Dominique to the Clippers for that hack Danny Manning.
Oh, come on, man. Give Danny Manning some love, bro.
Never will.
Give Danny Manning some love, man.
So
It's national champion Danny Manning. Come on, man.
Yeah, Kansas, baby.
That's right. Big Ricky Grace.
That's one season in Beantown when he was 35 years of age. He played 77 games that year, averaged 17.8 points on a team that went 35 and 47 under the late Chris Ford. They made it to the playoffs, even with that record there. They lost to Shaq's Magic 3-1 in the first round when it used to be a 5-game series there. So actually had a season high of 46 points that season at age 35 against the Rockets. So after that one season, he actually ended up getting a big contract in Greece to go and play with Olympiacos. So he's actually spoken about that on the podcast this week, the Up in Smoke podcast with Stephen.
That was awesome, by the way.
Which was really
that was awesome,
great
man.
story. Stuff. Magic Johnson sending girls to his room in his rookie season and stuff like that, which is quite fun. So, he ended up returning to the NBA a year later after Olympiacos, where he signed with the Spurs. And he, of course, finished off with Orlando. So I do have both of those jerseys that I'll pull out. Thought I'd maybe throw a little bit of quick trivia to you guys. I like doing stuff like that. Firstly, the reason he didn't wear 21 is that number's retired, Matt. Do you know who that one might be? It's definitely a blast from the past. It's one I did have to look up.
21.
He thought 12 still the same, combination of numbers. Just
no, I can see it, but I can't get the name.
Nah, it's also
someone in the 60s. Bill Sharman, yeah. That's right.
The actual trivia is, so that 94-95, I got the roster up here. It is one of the most random rosters of Celtics teams I can see. So I've got the roster. I want between the two of you guys to name 5 of these guys. That's all I want. I want 5 names there. So just feel free to throw out any names. So the 94.
I've blanked out those times. Fair
enough.
You couldn't.
Xavier McDaniel. Dino Raja.
McDaniel is correct. Xavier McDaniel.
Dino Raja.
Dino Raja, correct.
Surely Sherman Douglas was on that team.
Sherman Douglas. Woods is on a roll here.
Better than me.
One of them I wore his jersey when
Rick
Matt
Fox.
was on one of the times.
Surely Rick Fox, man. He got traded to LA a year after that. How many is that? Is that 4?
That's 4. Yep.
Never nervous Purvis had to be on that team.
Purvis was on that team.
Gotcha, bro.
So that's 5. So the other one, D Brown, the other one's a note anyway.
D Brown, of course,
a former Sydney King. We're going to get that one. A big guy out of Iowa. Ooh. Number 55.
ACL.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Had one of my favourites, Blue Edwards.
Theodore Edwards, all
getting
right.
a bit sort of
Edwards is on that
random
team.
there.
That's right.
Yeah, then sort of we had
Told you I
Wilcox, what he
blanked it
said.
out.
Jay Humphreys, Eric Montross,
Eric
David
Montross.
Wesley is the other guy in his first season as well there. So very strange team, wasn't it, Matt, that team back there? Do you remember much of Dominique in the season? I know it looks so strange seeing him in
I remember he had an Achilles issue, and it's kind of worked his way through it. That's the only thing I remember about it. Obviously a legendary player, and it was a funny time in the post-Bird era. It was, they just really never had a plan for it when the big three fell off the cliff, and either went away or retired or what have you. But I mean that was a very, very rough period. For about a decade, really, more than a decade.
I like Dino Raja on that team, I must admit. He's someone that I always enjoyed the way he played. Didn't sort of hang around for long in the NBA, did he? He was back in Europe, but a bit of a trip down memory lane. Woods, any thoughts before we move on about Dominique and Green?
I mean, just like you talk about Patrick Ewing playing for the Seattle Supersonics and Orlando Magic, or Hakeem, or Tony Parker for Charlotte, or it just does not seem right,
No.
Yeah.
So that's all I have to say.
Agreed. I mean, I was used to Dominique having all those battles.
And we're Hawks guys, man. We're Hawks lifers, right? To see our guy, and I'm a huge Danny Manning fan, so.
Get out of it. Don't know press stop on this recording, but
I mean,
pretty
it's
random
interesting.
one, right? There's not a lot of these jerseys going around, I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's interesting, isn't it, that back in those days, you really wanted, there are certain guys that you just wanted them to be one-team players.
Sure.
And nowadays, it's rarer than, I mean, LeBron kind of, he's gone everywhere, as an all-time great. And you just Magic, you could never imagine Magic Johnson or Larry Bird playing for anybody else, right?
Steph's going to be maybe the only
Michael,
or
Kobe.
Or Kobe, yeah, absolutely. And but nowadays it's kind of, you're cheering on laundry, as the saying goes. You're not, if you're a fan of a particular team, because guys are going in and out. That's why I think, from a selfish aspect, I'm glad that Jason and Jalen are going to be hanging around Boston for, I think, most of their, if not all of their career, which I think would be fantastic if they can retire a Celtic.
Good. So look, I'd recommend to anyone, after you've played the Throwback Hoops podcast and you've listened to the roundtable, if you've got a bit of time left, then go and listen to that Up in Smoke podcast this week with Dominique and listen to some of those great stories that Captain Jack and Matt Barnes talk about. So, all right, fellas, appreciate that. Well, of course, we got some previews to get into, and we thought it'd be fitting this week, of course, that we're going to do Sydney and Perth for these two previews. We haven't forgotten the 36ers, we must say. We're saving that for the last week. It just had to happen to work out that they're going to come on a random week there. But we'll start off with the Kings, right? I did say to you guys before we hit the record button, you guys can't talk all night. I don't want to hear about every season of the Kings.
I promise, I've talked enough. People don't want to hear me go on and on about it.
No, but I know when you two start talking Kings, there's no stopping you. So what I thought we'd do, Woods, maybe if you want to put up the slides that you've got, Woods, and maybe talk through that, and then we'll sort of just go through a bit of a preview on the Kings.
Yeah, sure. I didn't want to sort of, rehash some of the stuff that was discussed on the roundtable yesterday. So I thought there's a few topics I want to talk with Matt about. So let me just go through the roster. So for those who can't see the 24-25 roster, Brian Gorgian, the head coach. Coming back, we got Alex Tui, Clara Samia, Kawat Noi, Jalen Adams, Malawach, Sean Bruce, and Jalen Galloway. Coming in, we got Bull Cole from the Cairns Taipans, Cam Oliver, love it, Henry Lau, Isaiah Liafa, Jason Spurgeon, Kelly Leopele, how do I say that? Leo Pepe, I said, right? Tyler Robertson and Xavier Cook's coming back, right? The depth chart as it looks, Adams, Cole, Tui, Galloway, Cooks, and Oliver to start. So a few questions I had, I guess, Matt.
Hey, Woods, is that an all-star team or is that just a team roster you put up? A team roster, is it? Yeah.
Well, the first question I had was, I think you mentioned yesterday on the roundtable about the front court depth. So when the season gets down to the business end, we got the end of the season, the playoffs, the game slows down a bit, right? You played the game in the half court a little bit more, right? So you need to throw someone at a Kiana Pinder, let's say, a Jordan Hunter, a Jonah Bolden, right? This is where I'm a bit concerned, right? You've got these guys who are playing these small ball lineups, but what about having that big body that you need? And then you said that the young kid, Spurgeon, what's his name?
Spurgeon, yeah.
He's not going to play. If there's an injury, right? this guy needs to step up and actually contribute potentially.
Mm.
So talk to me about that, and that's the one Achilles heel I see.
It's the one I see as well, if there is one. I think they've got all their bases covered. And look, even Brian said that to me, that he does have that concern. But as he also pointed out, having Xavier Cooks in kind of covers up for a multitude of sins, including the lack of a head topper like, a Jordan Hunter, like potentially Tyrell Harrison, if he busts out for Brisbane. I guess the interesting thing is when you kind of look at it, and obviously we're going to get into Perth in a moment, that both teams are in the same boat as far as the big man depth is concerned. Yep. They really are. But Sydney have got the better front court, I think, than what Perth does. But but they're still very, very similar in how they've decided to approach recruiting this team. Oliver plays bigger than what he is, and he is big enough. Yeah. I mean, I think you guys obviously would have seen it when they played New Zealand and seen him in the Blitz against Cairns. It struck me when I saw him up close when I was at training a couple of weeks ago. I'd forgotten how big the guy was. I mean, he's legitimately huge, and I mean, it's interesting that they feel like they can get away with it. Where the potential hurt is on the offensive glass. Yep. The opposition offensive glass, not the Kings. I think I saw a couple of instances of that against Cairns where they got overpowered because they're just too small or not big enough. But then Cooks plays bigger than what he is. Oliver plays bigger than what he is, as I said. Spurgeon will get minutes, I think, would he, at some stage? But he's not going to play much, realistically. He's a young, big guy. He's played 4 years in college at Bowling Green State, D1 college in mid-major. But, he's looked okay, but, I mean, he's probably he's a development player, so he's the 13th, 14th guy, or 13th guy on that squad. It's a concern, but they can work around it.
Spurgeon reminds me a little bit of Jordan Hunter when he was just really young, coming through the ranks, and Gazy wouldn't play him, right? He's got an opportunity to learn.
Sure.
Okay, so when we talk about the big men, last year, who we had two really good big men, right? We had Jordan Hunter, we had Jonah Bolden, right? Jonah Bolden said, listen, I want to go play for Mody Mayor. And Mody Mayor, he doesn't care if you're Parker Jackson Cartwright. He doesn't care if you're Max Darling. He's going to expect excellence from you, right? So Jonah Bolden said, look, I'm going to go play for this coach because I think he's going to get the best out of me. And I know you said it last night. You said it on the podcast. I think you said New Zealand's going to benefit from this because Jonah Bolden spent the last 3-4 years, trading on the crypto market or whatever. So he hasn't been conditioned. So he needed a year to get back into shape.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So New Zealand are going to benefit from this the most because he's had that year.
I believe that.
And I'm with you. But in hindsight, if he knew that Mody Mayor was not going to be the coach, right? And that someone who's got a great relationship with him since he was a child, right? In Brian Gorgian, great relationship with his father, would have been his mentor and his coach. Would this decision have actually gone forth? Would he have maybe stayed with Sydney if he knew?
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't directly asked Jonah that question, but it is a big what if, isn't it?
Yep.
And I mean the whole Mody Mayor situation, he kind of left the Breakers a little bit in the lurch, in all honesty. And nothing against him. I mean, he had great opportunity in Japan, but yeah, it is a great what if. There's no doubt. And look, you talked about Geordie. I was really disappointed to see him go. I understood the reasons why, because let's face it. It was, as I said, it was very toxic there last year for a number of people. Not just, I mean, Angus Glover was probably chief among them, and again, we can get on him in a minute. But yeah, Jordan was like he really fell in love with the game over the last 2 or 3 years. Ben Knight, of course, my really good friend and broadcast partner, and he had a lot to do with Jordan as a coach and kind of a mentor. And one of the things he used to say to me was that he didn't love the game enough because it didn't mean that much to him because he's very wealthy family. He comes from a very wealthy family, and it just didn't mean that much to him.
And even though outside of basketball.
And it's outside of the game. He's really intelligent. He's great guy. But I think it was good for him. I think he reached the end of the line with Sydney.
Yep.
I think especially with what went on last year, and I think it was good for him to leave. But I think you plug Jordan Hunter into this team, if you were able to keep him with some of the other pieces, and I mean, Robbie talks about an all-star team. Holy cow! Because I've got enormous time for Jordan, and just one of those great guys in that pick and roll, the way he dives to the basket and finishes, and developed a low post game, and I mean, terrific player. So they'll miss him.
He's a decent post defender as well, right?
Someone's
backing down in the post and playing that back to the basket game. You need to have someone who's specialized in defending a back to the basket offensive player. There's not many, right? And I think Sydney, that's the one hole.
But then, and I suppose, but then you have to look at the opposition teams, right? Talked about Perth. Like that's going to be mano a mano. I mean, it's going to be a wash. Okay, probably more difficult for Perth to guard Oliver and Cooks down the other end. To be fair, then you look at Melbourne. Marcus Lee, he's not a big, strong power guy. I'm talking about the guys that they're likely to meet in the playoffs. Probably the one team that they could potentially have problems with, funnily enough, is Illawarra.
Yeah, Darius Days, man. I
texted you.
Days is going to be good, man. He's going to be just like Gary Clark. He's got a back to the basket game.
Well, Days is going to be. I think. Look, no disrespect to Gary. I think Gary's terrific. He's an upgrade. He's a dead set upgrade.
Julian O'Brien was texting with me earlier, and I'm telling, hey Jo, man, this guy averaged 3.1 steals per 48 minutes in college basketball. So he's going to be good, man, from the power forward position.
So that's the ironic thing, and potentially, you want to go. The other one is obviously Tasmania with Magnay. Yeah, that's the other one
for sure.
But it's we've got those guys, but not too many of them. So I suppose that's how you look at it as well. Is okay, who are they potentially going to meet come playoff time? And it might be arrogant to say they're going to make of course they're going to make the playoff. Come on, if they don't make the playoff, it would be just ridiculous. It's just not. It's going to happen. They'd have to have catastrophic injuries, like 2 or 3 of their main guys would have to go down for them to miss the playoffs.
Hey, Woods, I know you want to ask Matt about Gorge. I want to ask Matt just quickly. We did hear him talk about Abdul Fattah, and you were pretty frank with your comments. You said he was one of the worst coaches you've seen. I listened to Woody for years telling me that Moose Rabilia was one of the worst coaches he's ever seen. So let's settle this now.
Too.
Who was the worst of those 2 Kings coaches?
Moose is worse. Moose does not even know how to pick up a whiteboard and draw up a play. Come on, man. Right? And I like Moose
I could tell you a story about I got in very serious trouble for something I wrote about him once upon a time. And when I actually got for the first time ever, I went over to so I was writing for the NBL website at the time, and I was also writing for the Kings. And I was very, very scathing of a particular game, where they were they lost, I think it was to New Zealand, they lost by 30 odd, whatever it was. And I just couldn't believe how unprepared they were. And David Koch, obviously I know David very well. He was one of the owners at the time, and he was sitting. I was on the media bench, which was on the floor right next to the bench, the opposition bench, and David Koch literally sitting next to me. And we were going back and forth. He was horrified, and I said, "Mate, I'm telling you, this is the most unprepared team I've ever seen in my life." And and I said so. And I went to Perth. It was the Kings at Challenge Stadium. It was the game after Rabilia had been sacked. He got moved up to a CEO position, replaced by Tim Hudson. And typically I just rock up to shoot around on the game day. And I was told by Tim Hudson that I wasn't welcome. I never forgave him for that. No, they were that pissed off. He sat. I'll never forget this. He sat me down in the lobby. It was a Pan Pacific hotel. Kings were staying in the hotel opposite, and he was like, "Oh yeah, there's just so much pressure." He just made up some crap to me. I've never forgiven him for it, and it was because they were pissed off at what I said. And I was being authentic and honest. And by the way, I was 100% right, because you're right. I mean, Ian should never be a head coach. I mean, it was. It was
used to get so
annoyed. And I got annoyed, but after you talked about the fire.
And Abdel Fattah was atrocious, man. Let me tell you. He was atrocious. People do not know what went on. And I've been messaged a bit about, can you? No, it's not for me to say.
I just got
but
something.
I know what went on.
Let me say it, right? So that you talked about the firepower last night, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then
0708, yeah.
Yeah, Moose Rebellion came in after that firepower when we came back.
Yeah, he was the first coach of the new Kings in 2010, 2011.
So we'll let it slide. He was trying to do good things by us. We were on a budget by that time, right? And yeah, Mahmoud Abdul Fattah was not great. But let's talk about Jalen Adams a little bit, right? I think about the environment that was created last year was bad for him, on and off the court, right?
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, you needed someone like Chase Buford, who's such a great mentor, a great, someone who he looked up to, and I think
had
it
that great
was
relationship with him.
I think it was they worked at Wisconsin together. I think Matt Logue said yesterday on the show that like he needs a bit of a leash, like let him run free. It's like me at work, man. Like I'm a sales executive, right? And like I always break the rules to make my sales, but my boss lets me do it. So same sort of thing, right? He needs that bit of rope, and I think Abdul Fattah wasn't the great fit for him. And off the court, he had issues. We heard about all the stuff with Angus Glover, who from all reports they were great friends in that championship year, right? They had a great relationship, and then 2 years later, they're arguing, they're fighting. That is a product of the environment that Coach Abdul Fattah created, right? You bring in guys like Denzel Valentine, etc. These are not great characters, right? So now I want to ask you, Matt, what did the front office do to go to Jalen and say, listen, bro, come back to Sydney, right? We got rid of this guy. We got a new system. We got new coaching stuff. How did he agree to come back?
I actually don't know the backstory to it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And I was surprised as anybody that he did come
likewise.
back.
Yeah,
and I like Jalen a lot, I mean, and I said, if you remember, I actually said that that year he had with Chase, when he won the championship, and how brilliant he was. And I said, you kind of look at the great point guards in Sydney Kings history, and even if it was a single season, it was right up there. And the difference between that and what he put forward the following year was, like night and day. Or not following year, 2 years. It was 2 seasons, rather. It was like night and day. I mean, the numbers were still there, but you could tell, I mean, there was
Body
just a lot of
as well.
Yep.
Well, that was the thing, wasn't it? I think more than anything else, that's how you can tell. There were guys in that team that were flat out disinterested. Yeah. There were guys in that team that played with no effort. You mentioned one of them already, Woody. I mean,
sure,
disaster, and it was, it was poorly constructed. But then again, I think a lot of it comes down. Sometimes you can have a mismatch of talent that maybe doesn't gel, but if you've got the right guy leading it, you can at least make something of it. The problem is this guy was all wrong. Abdul Fattah was just all wrong. And, I mean, just so much stuff went. The place was absolutely toxic. And it was remarkable because of what Chase and then before him, Will, had kind of built, and, that whole attitude that they had. And it was, the vibe was just completely wrong. And, as I mentioned, I spoke to a particular player and 5 weeks in who told me that there were guys that were in it for themselves. And I think we know who he was referring to.
Yeah.
And it's just really sad. And there are guys that on that team you hope weren't tarred with the same brush, like an Angus Glover, like a Jordan. I mean, what happened to Angus was not his fault. And it wasn't nothing to do with how he played or the production I mean, this kid was a hero. And in one season, it was not. I didn't see eye to eye with the coach. Well, the coach didn't believe in him. And the end result was he got benched, and for ridiculous reasons. But anyway.
And Matt McQuade, I mean, we're being harsh on Moose Rebellion, but after Moose Rebellion, we had Damian Cotter, we had Andrew Gaze, we had Will Weaver. All these guys built a great culture for the Kings.
Yeah, one thing I'll say about Moose in his defense, right?
Yeah.
Have a look at the team that he had. They built that team initially, like that was last minute. They were just getting guys off the street at the end of the day. They really were.
Sure. I mean, Kevin Rash was playing for that team.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the second year. That was the second year. But I mean, whereas Abdul Fattah, this is the thing. It's all comparative, right? You got to be look at the talent he had. I mean, Yeah, they had injuries, sure, but everybody does. Anyway, it was just a bad scene overall.
Yeah, I mean the culture was built well by those previous coaches, is what I was trying to say to you. And
Yeah,
Abdul Fattah
100%.
came in and he didn't build a great environment that everyone wanted to come to
He just
work
wasn't
every day.
prepared for it. He
Yeah.
wasn't prepared. He wasn't, he was going to do it. He did it things a particular way, which didn't work, which, just he wasn't at the level that was required. And, and didn't have the kind of passion and the kind of energy and, the kind of stuff that's required in a city like this. And make matters worse, a team that was going for a historic second three-peat and fell apart. So, but anyway, as I also said, sometimes you do need to go through some adversity for things to change, and they've changed overwhelmingly in the positive.
Thanks, man. We'll move on to Perth in a second. But one final question I got for you, right? A lot of our audience, a lot of our viewers have sent in questions about this, right? And they've said, Brian Goorjian, I know you said 25 years, he's the master, right? But let's not get it twisted. Since he left Illawarra, 3-4 years ago, he's made some questionable decisions on and off the court. Whether it be his selection, whether it be what he did at the World Cup or the Olympics, his inability to call timeouts at opportune times. Okay, yes, he won a three-peat in the early 2000s, right? But it's 20 years later. The game's a lot different now. And a lot of our viewers have sent in questions saying, listen, Woods, are you worried about your Kings? Are you worried about Brian Goorjian? Has the game passed him by? For those people who say that, what does Matthew McQuade have to say? That's a good question.
Yeah, look, I disagree with a lot of that premise. I really do. There is a story. I don't know if it'll ever be told, but obviously a lot of people were up in arms about the whole Matisse Tybal thing, the way the Olympic team was constructed, et cetera, and the choices that were made and who ended up on the team. There is a story which it's not for me to tell, but there are people who know. It would be one of the biggest stories in Australian basketball history if it ever came out about how that whole thing went down. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say anything else. But it was not Brian Goorjian's fault.
You heard it here first on TBH, man. You heard it here first.
Put it this way, it's not just Matt Logue knows about it, right? And there's other people that know, but it's not for me to say. It just isn't, and not in this forum, and I won't. But I'll defend him in that respect. There's a lot of armchair critics of Brian, and there's always been a lot of jealousy. And look, I have to say this. People know anyway. I'm very close to him. Okay, I have been for more than 20 years. And he. So you can take what I say with a grain of salt, but I've seen him come and I've seen him go. And let me tell you, it's more than just X's and O's with him. It's getting guys to buy in to what he is selling as far as what he wants a team to be and how he energizes people, how he relates to people, how he brings the best out in players. I've never seen any guy do it any better than he has in all my life. And I've seen a lot, obviously, given how bloody old I am. So I understand the angst. I understand. I'll tell you the thing that really pisses me off more than anything is this, and I did say this. This guy won the bronze medal for us. I am sick and tired of hearing this absolute nonsense about, it wasn't him, it was Lemanis that did all that. Lemanis wasn't the coach. He was. So Lemanis, God bless Andre. I think Andre's brilliant. But for people to constantly bring this up, that, Lemanis built that team and Lemanis ran the whole thing and not give credit where it's due for a man that got us a bronze medal, our first ever in an Olympic competition, it's just asinine to me. And again, I'm probably speaking from a biased viewpoint. So you can take what I say with a grain of salt. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But I just think, it's even the Illawarra situation. I mean, that team was dead. They had nothing. And he took them to 2 semifinals. Yes, they didn't get to a grand final, but they ran into the Kings. That's a great Kings team was just better than they were. So has it passed him by? Not from what I've seen. 70 plus years old, and I cannot believe how much energy the man still has. And I as I said, I was at training the other day, and just the way the way he commands the room, it's unbelievable. Like, these guys are pros, and they've a few veterans, and he gave it to them at times, and nobody talks back, and nobody raises their voice, and nobody, the shoulders don't slump, and the body language. It's just, he just brings a particular energy that is unmatched. So, yeah, again, anybody can say what they like. That's fine, and if you don't want to take my word, then that's fine as well. Because, as I said, I do have an inbuilt bias for him. I don't make any bones. I've never made any secret of it. I mean, it's just, how it is. But I just think that his background, his knowledge, his understanding, and just, nitpickings. Oh, he should have called a timeout here, a timeout there. I mean, yeah, it's a silly narrative. It really is.
All right, fellas, let's finish off this preview with a couple of quick predictions, right? So I'll start off maybe with yourself, Woods. 28 games. How many are the Kings winning, and what's their ladder position going to be?
19-9.
Ooh.
Second.
It's got a second. Okay, Matt.
22-6 first.
Wow.
Right, let's break this down at the end of the season.
I'll say 18-10 and first.
You would say that.
You think it's going to be a really even season? I think that's fair, actually. Yeah.
I think the Wildcats are going to be good. I think
the
Wildcats are going to be good. I think Melbourne's going to be good. We're all going to be around.
You've been messaging me all day about Cairns, saying they're going to be good.
I love Rob Edwards, man. I love Rob Edwards.
He's good.
Yeah.
Nice.
He's good.
All right. So we're expecting certainly a big season from the Kings. And look, how can you not? We've seen that roster. We know that arguably the greatest ever coach in Australia, or it's probably not even arguably, is going to be behind the helm this year. They've got amazing imports, amazing Aussies, and they've got some good young talent, which I'm looking forward to see this year as well.
All right, so you want to start talking about Perth or what? Right.
I'm looking.
Yeah, let's go. I want to talk about Perth.
Looking forward to see Tui as well.
My God,
in his sophomore season, so that's another big one for me. So, all right, well, appreciate that, boys. So now this is my time to shine. Right now we can talk about the greatest ever.
I'll put my microphone off. Man. There's hardly any Indians in Perth anyway.
Woods, maybe you read us through that, and then I'll give a bit of a preview on the Hawks.
So the 2020, so the Wildcats 24-25 roster. We got John Riley coming back, despite a lot of critics. It's awesome to see him come back, and they've kept the nucleus together. Ben Henschel, Bryce Cotton, David Okwera, Dante Russo Nance, Hiram Harris, Keanu Pinder, my boy, Christian Doolittle, Jesse Wagstaff come back for one final hurrah. Michael Harris, Ty Webster. I like Ty Webster coming back. Incoming, Elijah Pepper. Interested to hear your thoughts about him. The next star is Izan Almasa and Dylan Wilder, our former Atlanta Hawk, baby. Maybe you guys will start rebounding now, right?
I'm looking forward to it. I've got to say, fellas. Look, it probably didn't end on a high note last year. We had that 1-0 lead in the semis over Tassie. Went on to lose game 3 at home by 16. But look, that was obviously against the eventual champions there, so maybe it wasn't as bad as it seemed at the time. I like the team this year. I think a lot of Wildcats fans, myself included, have got high hopes. And we do have high hopes each and every season for such a successful franchise. But I like some of these off-season moves, right? So I guess maybe we'll start off with Isan Almanza there. So I thought that was a big coup getting him, right? I know there was a lot of teams that would have liked to have got him. We had Sar last year. Some people had mixed opinions on him, maybe with the game that he had or the way that he played. But I think Almanza is going to be really good coming in there straight away. And you mentioned that name, Woods, Elijah Pepper. So this is a guy that's coming straight out of college for UC Davis. Maybe I'll ask Matty about that one. What's your thoughts on Elijah Pepper? Because a lot of teams are high on
It's a great get. Yeah, it's a great get. He's a gunner. He can really stroke it from deep, and they probably needed that. Smart kid as well. Had very productive college career. And look, like always, it's a lot to put on kids when they're coming straight out of college. But there's the guys we're seeing are kind of 4 and 5 year guys. The extra year due to COVID. So it was a great get. I said this yesterday on the roundtable that I felt like that it's one of their better recruiting years, I think, that they've had. I think the 3 guys that they're bringing in are really quality guys across the board. And Almanza really is impressive. I mean, he doesn't have the same kind of physical, standout attributes that Sar does, but he's probably more talented and has a great career ahead of him. And I mean, to get him, and well, I think he could legitimately start. I mean, I know there's talk that Karim Lopez will start in New Zealand, which I'm not buying after what I've seen. I think he's just too young. But I could very much see this guy, step into a starting role. But then they've got a really solid five. That's what I'm really impressed with. And, a lot of it, strangely enough, is because you've had an evolution of Hiram Harris, who's kind of stepped into this role as kind of this unlikely starter. And yet he's a real key to them. So, yeah, I'm very excited about
someone
Wildcats
like Ben
this year.
Henschel as well, Matt. So someone we both commented.
Love. Well, you and I both know very
exactly,
well. Yeah.
So I think he's in for a big season. Maybe didn't quite get the minutes that some people thought. We've seen Corey Webster leave now. I think that's going to maybe free up a little bit more time, maybe in those positions there. He's looked great in the preseason. How do you think he'll go in that sophomore year?
Yeah, I agree. And look, I know Johnny copped a lot from Perth fans about that. Why isn't Benny Henschel playing?
Yeah.
But let me tell you, like, John really, and he would have been the same with you when did you call a COE game when Benny was playing? Yeah. So we both did. So it was quite funny because he was messaging me throughout that game when Inner West played them, and it was about Henschel, and he loves him. I mean, he really does.
Yeah.
So maybe he felt like he just needed to develop at his own pace, and sometimes that's good for kids.
Yeah.
But I think this year, it's time for him to start playing some minutes, getting some burn, and I think he will, because smart kid, aggressive, strong, good defender, has a lot of those traits that you love, and I could see him playing some really productive quality minutes this year for them, which is going to be huge.
It's funny, the COE game that I commentated, I went there all excited to see Henschel. Wildcats had already signed him. Ended up seeing a guy named Johnny Furphy that actually stood out considerably more and was just amazing. Did that Statue of Liberty dunk.
Right next to me.
People are still talking about
right
that
next to me. I was sitting courtside. I was sitting courtside having a beer. Yeah.
He put on a show.
He put on that, and his mum was next to me when he did that dunk. Man, was dope, man.
Look, the other thing for Perth, I'm sort of, I guess, optimistic, knowing that the majority of this team is returning players. And look, I'm biased. I know you guys are biased for your Kings. Of course, I'm biased to sit for Perth, but I think Cotton and Pinder may be as good at one or two punches you'll find in this league. I really do. The big one for me, though, is the new import. So Woody mentioned it, former Cav and recent Atlanta Hawk. So Woody and I both saw this guy play, 4 months ago in Atlanta Woods. He put on a show against Portland.
Amazing.
16 points or something.
Live.
Great to see
and a great friend of Matthew Dellavedova. Those two played together for 2-3 years at Cleveland. They've got a great friendship, and I think he would have put in a WhatsApp call to Delhi and say, listen, man, what's your league like? And so that helps,
what
right?
I'm pleased about, though, Woods, is remember I've been a little bit critical of that third or second import that Wildcats have had. I think since John Mooney, they haven't quite nailed the trio of imports there.
No.
I think he's a really good fit there.
Definitely.
He comes in, he gives the team, rebounding, which we know is a big weakness. He's a knockdown shooter. I know Matty's, compared into a Chris Gent, which I love, was a big fan of the crazy man back in the 90s.
And as Hugh B. Brown would say, you've got to remember, this guy averaged 11.1 rebounds per game in college, right?
That's it.
So this guy can rebound, and you guys need a guy who can get on the glass and get you some rebounds. This guy's going to be able to shoot threes at a very high rate, as Matt said yesterday, and he's going to be able to get on the glass.
What do you guys think about him being a six-man? Because that's what I'm hearing at this stage.
Well, they're saying that they want to get some miles into his legs, and I think that's fair. For he'll and again, and I go back to what I said about Hiram Harris, because you've got a Hiram Harris who's shown he can play as a starter and give you quality minutes. That gives you, the luxury really of, if you want to bring him off the bench, at least to start with. I can't see him not starting at some stage.
Absolutely not, man. This guy is
he's too talented. He fits such a need. You guys talked about it. Perth have been, for them, really the last 2, 3, 4 years, horrendous on the glass. Horrendous.
Absolutely.
They should be a lot better than they are. So what do? You go out and you get a guy. Not only do you get a guy who's an established monster, on the boards, but you also get a guy that fills another need, which is outside shooting around Bryce. So Bryce doesn't have, all that pressure on him. So Yeah, it was a great get.
He
Now
can play
again,
three
it's
positions, I reckon.
Hey, guys,
Honestly,
he
guys.
can
can,
play a
and
two
that's the other
defense,
thing,
four position.
versatility, and he'll defend as well. And
Absolutely.
those arms are freaking
Yeah,
long, 6'10"
long.
wingspan.
He'll
Long
do.
I knew he
outside
had a
line.
long wingspan. I looked it up. 6'10"?
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
cow!
He'll do
So that-
he'll do his best defensively, right?
Mm.
And like I'm talking about 4 or 5 months ago. How long ago was it since we saw him light
End
it
of
up
March.
on an
End
NBA
of
floor?
March. We saw him play live.
End of March.
Mm.
So in terms of pedigree, he's the one guy that comes into this league with the most recent NBA experience, pretty much.
Experience, yeah.
Well, our debut game, seeing Hawks play in person, he scored 17 points for it. So I come to say I'm excited to see him in the Wildcats
And
jerseys.
I agree with Matt.
So,
Hiram Harris has done a job starting, so he can fill that void for maybe 5-6 games till he gets his conditioning and
Yeah.
familiar with the system, and then you'd think that Hiram Harris would probably go into that 6-man role, right?
Yeah. Well, let's maybe give some predictions. So, look, the Wildcats in 22-23, they finished 15 and 13 in sixth place. Last year, they were 17 and 11 in second place. I think if things go their way, obviously injuries, like every team, hopefully really continues to develop as a head coach, and the Wildcats take care of business at home, which is, I think, something that's fallen out a little bit the last few years. I'm predicting that they will again finish with a 17 and 11 record and finish in second place there. So I said I had the Kings at 18 and 10. I'm going to have the Wildcats at 7 and 11 in second place, just in front of United. Where do you guys see the Wildcats finishing?
19 and 9
Yeah, me
in
too.
second, and the reason being, as I said, I think a lot of it does have to do if Winler really hits, then I think that's going to happen. I think 19 and 9 top two, and also if Almanza develops the way I think he's going to develop, this Wildcat team by the end of the season, it's going to be a team no one wants to play, and not the Kings, not anybody. They're going to be a frightening prospect. The only thing I want to see, I know Johnny laughs about it, but Bryce Cotton played 37 minutes a game last year. 37.
Yeah.
He's another year older.
Yeah.
They've got to find some rest for him during the season. And I think they've got more depth and more emerging talent that should allow Johnny to rest him a bit more judiciously.
Yeah.
Now, I know it's easy for me to say. The guy's one of the greatest, maybe one of the top 5 players. Well, not maybe, he is one of the top 5 players to ever play in this league. Full stop.
Yeah.
He just is. He's proven it. He's unbelievable. Why wouldn't you want to play him 40 minutes? Plus the fact he's got an unbelievable tank, and he always has. One of his real superpowers is just that tank of his. But having said that, they haven't won a championship since 2020. So it's been 4 years, and I said
that
this
was a questionable championship anyway.
Well, yeah, I did I say that?
No, I
didn't
said
say
that.
that.
I
please.
said that.
No, Julian said that. And I said to him, man, the Red Army's going to be after you. But I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, Robbie, about the Red Army as a whole. And what I said was an impatience. Do you feel like they're kind of at that point now, that they're really getting impatient for this team to go to that championship level again?
100%. They're so used to winning. I mean, some of those crowd figures last year were really shocking. Actually, you'd see those crowds, and it was ceilings.
That's why I'm asking.
There. Yeah, 100%. So I think they've they turned on the team a little bit last year. I think the optimism's back though this year. I think they like some of these additions. I know there was a few competing factors. There was other sort of sports on. I don't see that as an excuse sort of thing. They've always been a team that's traditionally had such a great fan base that have come and watched these games. So I do think that'll turn around. But I think you're right, though. It was strange last year. I think maybe they weren't enjoying, even though they finished second on the ladder, some of the early basketball in particular, the way the season started. They spent way too much time and energy trying to focus on really early on in the season and everything like that. I think Doolittle's someone that's grown on the fans. I think he's someone that they really like there. Jordan Usher, he had that really good game.
That first game, when he had 30, what was it, 35, and I thought, oh my God, that's it, done.
That was the worst thing that could have ever happened.
Yeah, it was.
hey, guys, listen. To one Perth Wildcats fan and another, NBL aficionado, I want to ask you something, right? David Okwira, under the tutelage of Dean Vickerman, he had a great year. And it was a big signing for Perth last year, and he didn't really get the opportunity to play much, right?
He's not going to this year either, in my opinion.
Is he going to play this year?
I don't think he will. I think Al Manza's definitely in front of him. We mentioned guys like Windler, if he can play 3 positions there and play at that 4, I don't see there's a lot of minutes for the guy there. So it's good depth to have, but I can't see him really playing any more than last year.
Well, Pinder's injury history, of course, that gives you a little bit of pause, and that's why he's there. I think it's an insurance play more than anything else, in all honesty.
No, for sure.
And Pepper and Henschel, there's not enough minutes going around, right?
Matt mentioned the thing with the minutes with Bryce. I mean, he's averaging 37 minutes. I'm sure Perth would prefer to get that to 34 minutes. It doesn't sound like a lot of difference, but it's just some different potential lineups you can show there. Get those 2 young guys in.
Right.
I mean, Henschel's going to be younger than Pepper, isn't he? I mean, he's basically second year in the pros this year. So those are guys that I think, and they've been getting big minutes in the preseason. Henschel's very versatile as well. I love the size that he's got. I mean, he's been touted as a future NBA player. I'm not sure whether that's going to happen, but at the very least, he could be a quality NBL player. So
for sure.
let's hope he continues to develop. But I think those 2 guys are going to help out with Bryce this year, and help out if they do get an injury. If Keanu does go down, they've got some actual depth this year.
Yeah, look, what it's all about is the playoffs, right? It's about getting Bryce as fresh as he possibly can be at playoff time when it absolutely matters.
Yeah.
And there are going to be games this year for that team where they're going to blow teams out. They're going to have games where they're going to be up by 25, 30. And I don't want to see Bryce Cotton on the floor when that happens. And if Johnny can sit him for a quarter, I mean, how huge would that be? Now, Bryce is the kind of guy that wants to play 40 minutes a game. I mean, it's just, he's hard to keep on the bench. And I completely understand it. But I think you got to be looking at the long game with him. And I don't think they've done a good job with that. But I think this year, given the emergence of this young talent that you've talked about, Robbie, that, this is a potentially great opportunity to manage his minutes in a really effective way. So by the time the playoffs roll around, we get nuclear armed Bryce, and God help the rest of the league if that happens, where he comes up and just dominates because he's got the energy, because he hasn't been taking the hits, because we know how much he gets hit. We know how teams get physical with him, because that's been the book on him, is to, if you're going to try and limit him, hit him and get physical with him, even as tough as he is, because he has had those little niggly injuries from time to time. So this way, if you can kind of manage all of that and get him to the playoffs, in as peak condition as possible, it's not going to be completely healthy because everyone's got niggles that time of year. But the point is, he'll have the type of energy he needs to be Bryce Cotton MVP.
Yeah.
And that's when it really counts more than anything.
Absolutely. Well, appreciate that, lad. So, look, based on these previews, we've potentially got a Sydney-Perth grand final. We've certainly got them finishing first and second on the ladder there. I think we're both in agreement. All 3 of us are in agreement with that. So, a lot of optimism for both of our teams there, I guess, and looking forward from the start. I think they've got an early game as well, don't they? They're playing in the
round 2. It's the Kings. It's actually brutal. So the Kings have got, I think it's Adelaide. I think that's the first game at Hoops Fest. And then I think they're going to, it's 5 days. So I would imagine if I know Gorge, they'll stay there, play Perth, and then come home. And then 2 days later at Kudos, play Illawarra. How's that for a double to get started in round 2? Wow, that's tough.
Definitely. No, I appreciate that. Look, we're just going to do a couple of very quick hits, Woods. We're not going to do classic packs this week. We've just got a couple of things on quick hits. So I just want to ask you firstly about the Blitz, fellas. So, we're recording Tuesday, the 10th of September. My Wildcats are on now, so I don't know the score. I'm going to go and sort of watch a bit of that later. It's pre-season. I don't get too excited for pre-season, but what are your thoughts so far? Is there any players or teams that have maybe stood out to you? Maybe we'll start with yourself there, Matt. Anything that's stood out to you, either good or bad, about the Blitz so far?
Yeah, it's funny. We were talking about it yesterday, and I guess the one thing that's a bit eye-opening is Tasmania being blown out by Adelaide.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think Scotty's too worried about that. It's the preseasons. I've always said you just don't want to overreact. I agree with Woody about we talked about him briefly before. I think Rob Edwards is going to be a player in this league. There's no doubt. And I think Cairns are going to surprise a few people.
For sure, man. You stole my thunder, man.
My man 40, and now he's got my man Alex Higgins-Stitcher as a development player, and which I'm absolutely thrilled about from the Inner West Bulls, and for us to send a guy up into the NBL is absolutely fantastic for the program, and he'll flourish under 40. There's no doubt. And 40's he's just awesome. I mean, I love the guy to death, and he's a fantastic coach, as we know, great development guy. And I think he's had a knack of getting these imports. You kind of go, how did he manage to get this guy?
Oh my God, yeah.
You know, yeah. And they've lost some guys, clearly. I mean, Menenga's a loss for them. But I think that just opens the door for Wardenberg to have a big year. So I like Cairns. Who else?
What about Tyrell Martin?
Tyrell Harrison has been the guy, I think, for he's been the most eye-opening for me because we've sort of been waiting for him to bust out, and hey, maybe this is the year because he's looked very impressive so far.
What about Jarrell Martin there as well, Matt? We saw that news that he could potentially be out for a third of the season. That's such a bad break, isn't it? I know.
It really
I'm sure
is.
You guys are really looking forward to it. I know you've mentioned he's a great guy. We know he's a great player. So tough break for Adelaide, a team that probably didn't need any tough breaks either, though. So yeah, what's your thoughts on that? Do you think they'll go out and sign someone? You have to, right?
They have to. They have to. At the very, I mean, they've signed a replacement player, but it's Graham Cubank's son, ironically, Tom Cubank. So he's not, he's not going to move the needle that much. I just find it interesting, and it's going to be tough to replace a guy like that. But they haven't had him. They need to get someone. They need to get someone in. They need to get another import in. There's no doubt. They have to, because if he's out for as long as they say, potentially 6 to 8 weeks, well, I mean, that's a third of the season at least gone. And if they're behind the 8 ball again, I mean, they're just not going to be competitive. I mean, it's a wins and losses league, and I love Jarrell. I mean, you couldn't find a better teammate. Great guy, humble as all get out, quiet, understated, and yet with enormous talent. And did such a great job in that championship year. As I said, earlier on the roundtable, I mean, people talk about the shot in game 2 that Dejan Vasiljevic hit at MyState Bank Arena. But Jarrell Martin in that game, I think he made his first 7 shots and was just so dominant and, completely out of it. He was just above the league at that stage. And, I mean, it was a great get for Adelaide, but obviously he has an injury history, and being a big guy with a foot problem, that can be really tricky. So even if he's cleared to play, who knows how long it's, potentially could flare up again. You don't know. So, unfortunately, I'd cut him and go in a different direction. And that's harsh. But hey, it's a wins and losses league. And let's face it, Adelaide, they better get it right after the debacle of an off-season they've had with that whole, Scott Ninnis, Mike Wells situation. Wow.
Is Mike Wells still there? Or have they moved him on yet? He's still there as recording, right?
Boom. Yeah.
Hey, Woods, I'll ask you. We know New Zealand's going over for the NBA, NBL games. It hasn't quite worked for some of these teams in the past. How do you see that?
Oh, no, look at Woody.
Listen, there's one thing I got to talk to Matt about, right? Freddie Gillespie is going to be dope. Just let him get his conditioning right. Let him get into things. Fred Gillespie is going to be awesome. He's going to use 10, 10, 1 and 1. He's going to be awesome, right? He's just going to fill a role. He's going to be awesome. He's taken a while to get used. I mean, imports come here, especially big men. They take a while to get accustomed to the way the game is officiated here, how things happen here. He's going to take a while to get used to things, but he's going to be damn awesome, right?
So in the words of Liam Santa Maria, Woody Venkat is staking his claim on Freddie Gillespie Island.
Yeah, I am on Freddie Gillespie Island.
You're on Freddie Gillespie Island.
He's going to be awesome, right?
Oh, look, I hope so.
Give him some time.
Yeah.
I do not like...
Look, you can only... Well, as I said, to be fair, Woody, I mean, obviously the first game's the first game. It was an absolute disaster. But he did look better in the second game against Perth.
I heard you.
I did say that. I did say that. So
I saw that.
Let's hope that progression continues, because then they're going to need him. Because I look at that team and think,
they definitely are. I've got him in the top 4, bottom 4 this year. I mean, to be fair, like...
Oh, yeah, you did, yeah.
It's New Zealand is a bit of a mystery. You said that the new coach who's never been a head coach ever, right? We don't know much about him. A lot of these guys, in fact, many of these guys came to play thinking they were going to report to Modi, and then so there's all that,
true.
Right? Just like in Adelaide with Scotty Innes, a lot of these guys came. So my observations from the Blitz is there's a bit of unrest there with New Zealand and Adelaide. I'm not wrong, right?
No, fair enough. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I thought we'd finish it off. We've got Mr. McQuade on, and we have to ask him a question about his Boston Celtics, right? So to take us out, Matty, congratulations on that championship. How How do you see him coming into this season? I think we're, about 5-6 weeks away from the NBA season starting. How are you feeling? We know Kristaps is out until probably early in the new year, but are you confident of this team going in? Can they repeat?
You know what the best thing that happened to this team? Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum getting disrespected. That's the absolute best thing that ever happened to this team. Yep. Because there's always the worry about the dreaded championship hangover, right? And we've seen it, and it is difficult to repeat. But giving these guys motivation when you didn't have to might have been the absolute best thing that ever happened to the Celtics, because they're both phenomenal, gifted athletes, and they're champions and they're winners, and they've been winners throughout their careers. And, I think the whole Olympic thing is going to, Jason's been very, very good about it, very mature about it, to be honest. And, at least publicly, but privately, you can bet that he'll be going out there with a point to prove. And the same with my man, JB. I think the both of them. And then, look, how on earth did they sign Lonnie Walker? I still can't. It's phenomenal. It's like, geez, Brad Stevens does it again, but you've still managed to keep everybody together. And it's I'm very confident.
Is Lonnie Walker going to make it through training camp?
Yeah, I know. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's how deep the team is.
Right?
How much do you reckon JB and Tatum would have loved having Drew Holiday on that team? He was the one that finally got him over the edges, and they've been so close the last few years. How an important piece of the puzzle was Drew Holiday to that Celtics team?
Phenomenal. And same with Derek. Both of them. And they're amazing characters. And, second row Joe as a head coach, he's not second row Joe no more. He's a legitimately great head coach. I think, to get that team to where they went, but then it's obviously, Brad Stevens, what a genius, one of the great executives of all time, putting together that group. Look, the Kristaps thing gives you pause for sure, because big guys and lower extremity injuries are, can be problematic, even if you recover from them. And he's had those problems throughout his career, but they have a great strength and conditioning. There's an Australian running it, actually, so which is quite amazing. But great strength and conditioning team that they have over there, and they'll be fine without them. Al's still the ageless wonder that he is, and Cornette will get time, and Cornette was terrific last year, and
Cornette.
Yeah, he was great, and Sam Hauser's back again, and Peyton Pritchard in the backcourt is quite amazing. They've got him for a song.
Yeah. Hey, it's testament to the
specialist. So, look, I still think even with Kristaps potentially missing, a chunk of the season, and maybe a sizable chunk, I still think they've got to be the favourites. Obviously Philly's done a great job rebuilding and bringing who they brought in, but I still think it's the Celtics and everyone else, to be honest with you.
And finally, Robbie, it's testament to the character of the guys, in Boston, for their non-selections or lack of playing time to take it on the chin and just accept that that's just the way it is. So it's awesome to see. And that's just going to make them stronger, right? When they get that opportunity, they're going to be hungry for it, and they're going to take it with both hands, right?
Well, and that's the thing. I think it's given them a point to prove, where they may have, and look, not that they would, but I think it's human nature to kind of maybe drop off a little bit after you've attained the ultimate, right?
Yeah.
But I think this gives them that extra kind of, hey, we've got something to prove. And, as I said, I think it was the worst thing for the rest of the league to, JT and JB to have that kind of chip on their shoulder.
Well said. And look, they're certainly my prediction to go back to back.
Likewise.
Maybe the Hawks with Vic Krejci and Garrison Matthews, maybe they could compete there. But
Garrison Matthews,
in all seriousness, that Boston Celtics team, it's so well run. The coach, Mazzulla's funky. Joe Mazzulla's, showing you can coach.
Joey Maz.
That's exactly right. You've got guys coming back, even though they're champions, that are hungry and wanting to sort of prove some points. So appreciate that one, Matty. I know you're looking forward for that to start. Could it be that elusive year where both your teams, the Kings and the Celtics, has that ever happened before?
Yes.
I don't think it would have.
No.
The Celtics.
No, it has not.
It wouldn't have, right?
No, because the Celtics were terrible in the first Kings iteration, the first Kings championship iteration. That sort of, the 03 to 05, and then the Gorgian run.
At least Matty's got a chance, Robert. We got no chance.
What,
Hawks and
we might make a
Wildcats,
plan,
Hawks and
come on.
Kings.
Yeah.
Is that combination?
Try, man. Come on.
That's it. I really appreciate it, lads. Look, we could speak all
This
night.
could be
It's
the year,
really
actually.
been,
Kings and Celtics. No?
Yeah, true.
This could be that year.
It's been absolutely, awesome to have you back on, Matt. We hope we continue this as a
Pleasure.
regular thing.
Anytime.
It is a regular thing, man.
Of course, it is. We'll be,
Once a year.
Number 5 when we get him on next. So we're just going to do a quick outro. So as I mentioned at the start of the show, well, maybe I didn't mention, I can't even remember now. Please make sure you do subscribe to us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We can also be followed on X at Throwbacks Hoops, Instagram throwback.hoops, and email address throwbackhoopspodcast@gmail.com. Matt, maybe we'll throw it off to you. Where can people find you, listen to you, everything else like that? Give a bit of a plug there.
Well, on X, it's at MattMC33. 33 being in honor, of course, of my all-time favorite basketball player, Mr. Bird. And also Instagram and Facebook if you want to friend me. I don't bite, so I'm happy to accept any friends as long as it's not a spam thing, which I've been caught out on a couple of times. The Throwback pod. Throwback. I'm giving you guys a rest.
Awesome,
Actually,
man. We love you, Matthew McQuade.
We love you. We love you guys. No, that's right. You guys do an amazing job, and I've loved your season previews in particular. And it's always a pleasure to chop it up, as Woody would say, with you guys. But we've restarted the Roundtable and Roundtable podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple and Spotify and everywhere else. Really, as I mentioned, we're right now we're number 2 in Australia for basketball podcasts, which is quite spectacular. I mean, we started out kind of in this, we jumped 6 and then went to 2 and went down to 4, back up to 2 again. So, and when you look at some of the podcasts around us, it's quite amazing. So all American podcasts, and to be that, that number 2 in Australia is it's mind blowing to me. I just never expected it. But it's nice to know that we've got a loyal fan base and plenty of listeners, and hopefully we entertain them as you guys always do. So hopefully I've been having a lot. I mean, you guys have been you've been creeping up there. I've been looking. I think it's the mix of ours, because we get the YouTube side maybe takes away some of the audio. That's right.
Hey, Matt, hopefully we get that inner West game at Hills this season as well. It hasn't happened for 2 seasons in a row. The first season of NBL 1 East, we had the inner West playing at Castle Hill against Hills. Hopefully 2025 we see a return. They fix up that quirk in the schedule there, and we get to see you sort of in our local there. So, Woods, any final words, mate?
No, I think it's really good that those guys are doing so well, man. I love the round table. I was on the bus to see my dad today to Mount Druitt. He's staying in Mount Druitt, so I listened to the round table on the way there. This is awesome. Really good stuff, Matt. Maybe get it on YouTube's good. YouTube's a good avenue, right? To get the video.
It's already number 2. Come on, look.
We'll leave YouTube to you guys.
Nice. All right, well, you've got to start planning that next jersey, Matt. I know the cupboard's getting a bit bare now. I'm sure you've got something else in there. So Woody said he's ordered a Rob Edwards jersey today, so maybe
I got Rob Edwards, I got a Deng Adele, and I got a Bull Call jersey on the way.
Look at that. On the way.
Nice.
All right, we'll really appreciate it, fellas. Look, get out and watch the NBL Blitz. Of course, we'll have a bit of a finish up previews next week. We'll also preview that round 1 and give some predictions. Thanks again so much for Matt for joining us. And peace out from the Throwback Hoops.